One single injection, cancer gone, 80% of patients in remission. That's not science fiction. That's a real clinical trial published in the New England Journal of Medicine. If you've seen those headlines lately, you probably thought we finally cracked the code. Cancer solved, pack it up, go home. But here's the thing, then. That story is only half true, and the other half. It's far more complicated, far more fascinating, and far more important to understand. This is the story of CAR T-cell therapy, the closest thing modern medicine has to a guided missile for cancer, but also a missile with a very specific target, a very high price tag, and side effects that can put you in the ICU. Let's start with your immune system. Think of it as your body's private military. White blood cells patrol your bloodstream like soldiers on night watch. Among them, there's an elite unit, T cells. These are your assassins. When they find malware, when they find something that doesn't belong, they punch a hole in it, inject toxic chemicals, and watch it explode from the inside. Brutal, effective, elegant even. But cancer cells are not ordinary enemies. They are shapeshifters. Under a microscope, researchers have watched something disturbing happen. T cells attack a tumor cell but fail to destroy it completely. Instead, the T cell rips away part of the cancer cell's surface, like tearing a name tag off someone's jacket. Scientists call this trogocytosis, and here's why it matters. Once that surface marker is gone, the T cell no longer recognizes its target. The cancer cell just stripped off its uniform. Now it walks freely through the body, invisible to the immune system. It's not that your immune cells are weak, it's that cancer learned to cheat. So what if you could rebuild the soldier? What if you could hand it a GPS tracker that never loses the signal, no matter how many times the enemy changes disguise? That is exactly what CAR T therapy does. CAR stands for chimeric antigen receptor. In plain language, scientists extract your own T cells from your blood. Then in a lab, they attach a synthetic receptor, a custom-built homing device, that locks onto a specific protein found on cancer cells. Then they multiply those upgraded cells by the millions and inject them back into your body. One injection, your own cells reprogrammed to hunt, that's the promise. And in blood cancers, leukemia, lymphoma, it delivered. But why only blood cancers? Here's where the structural difference changes everything. In leukemia, cancer cells float freely in your bloodstream. They're exposed, vulnerable, alone. A CAR T cell cruising through your veins can find them easily, like a shark in open water chasing scattered fish. The numbers back this up. A landmark trial published in the New England Journal of Medicine studied 75 young patients with relapsed acute lymphoblastic leukemia. These were patients aged 3 to 23 who had already failed conventional treatment. Within 3 months of CAR T infusion, 81% achieved complete remission. 6 months later, 90% were still alive. For a cancer that had resisted everything else thrown at it, those numbers were staggering. Another major study, same journal, looked at aggressive non-Hodgkin lymphoma, patients with diffuse large B-cell lymphoma who had exhausted all other options. The overall response rate hit 82%, complete remission in 54% of cases. 18-month overall survival reached 52%. Now 52% might not sound miraculous at first glance, but consider this. These patients previously faced less than 50% survival at just 6 months. CAR T didn't just buy them time, it rewrote their prognosis entirely. And this most recent long-term data is even more striking. The Juliet trial, one of the foundational studies that led to FDA approval, just published its 5-year follow-up. Among patients who responded to treatment, 56% were still alive 5 years later. For a disease once considered incurable at that stage, researchers called it proof that CAR T cells truly are a living drug. Some patients still had detectable engineered cells circulating in their blood half a decade after a single infusion. So why can't we do this for liver cancer, stomach cancer, colon cancer? Why not just inject these supercharged cells into every tumor patient? The answer lies in architecture. Solid tumors are fortresses. Unlike blood cancers, where malignant cells drift individually, solid tumors form dense, walled-off masses. They build their own blood supply, they hoard oxygen and nutrients, and worst of all, they create what scientists call an immunosuppressive microenvironment, a toxic moat around the castle. Picture it this way. A CAR T cell approaching a solid tumor is like a Navy SEAL trying to storm a bunker, while the bunker is pumping out nerve gas. The tumor actively secretes chemicals that paralyze immune cells. It starves them of oxygen. It shuts down their ability to function. Even if a CAR T cell fights its way inside, it can't survive long enough to finish the job. Researchers around the world are working on solutions. 4th and 5th generation CAR T cells are being engineered with built-in armor, extra signaling molecules, cytokine boosters, even CRISPR-edited gene modifications designed to resist the tumor's suppressive tactics. Some teams are combining CAR T with checkpoint inhibitors to strip away the tumor's defensive shields, but as of now, no CAR T product has been approved for any solid tumor. Let's talk about what happens when CAR T therapy works and what it costs your body. When those engineered cells activate inside you, they multiply explosively, and as they destroy cancer cells, they release massive amounts of inflammatory signals called cytokines. This triggers something called cytokine release syndrome. High fever, plummeting blood pressure, racing heart, difficulty breathing. It happens in the majority of patients, mild in some, life-threatening in others. Then there's neurotoxicity. Your brain has a protective barrier, the blood-brain barrier, that normally keeps harmful substances out. But the inflammatory storm can breach that wall. When it does, patients experience confusion, difficulty speaking, seizures, altered consciousness. The good news is that with early intervention, steroids and targeted medications, most of these effects reverse completely, but they demand intensive monitoring. There's also a quieter danger. When millions of cancer cells die at once, they dump their internal contents into the bloodstream. Your kidneys have to process all of it. If the volume overwhelms them, you get tumor lysis syndrome, potentially fatal kidney damage. Again, manageable with preparation, but real. And there's the cost, not just biological, but financial. A single CAR T treatment in the United States carries a list price between $370,000 and over $600,000. That's before hospitalization, monitoring and managing complications. So here's where we stand. CAR T-cell therapy has already changed the treatment landscape for blood cancers. It's no longer experimental for those patients, it's guideline recommended for relapsed cases. Nearly 6,000 patients a year now receive it in the US alone, up from fewer than 100 when the first trials began. But it is not a universal cancer cure. Not yet. It is a precision weapon, devastatingly effective against targets it can reach, currently powerless against the fortified kingdoms of solid tumors. The research continues, the engineering gets more sophisticated, and every year scientists push closer to breaking through those fortress walls. The story of CAR T therapy is not the story of a miracle. It's the story of a revolution still in progress. One injection, one engineered cell, one patient at a time.